Hi folks, we're going to take a look at the solution to page 234, number 19. Okay, so they give us that the angle 2x is in the fourth quadrant, so between 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi, and they tell us that the cosine of 2x is 8 over 17, so it makes sense that it's positive since 2x lies in that quadrant. Okay, so first question is sketch the location of the angle 2x. Okay, so here, since it's in the fourth quadrant, 2x has to be somewhere in that fourth quadrant. Okay, next thing they ask us to do is to determine which quadrant contains the angle x. Okay, so let's see how we can figure this out. Well, to be in the fourth quadrant, I have to be at the very least 3 pi over 2. So what's half of 3 pi over 2? Well, it's just 3 pi over 4. So I know that at the very least, my angle x has to be 3 pi over 4, because that's half of this angle. And then at the very most, the angle 2x can be 2 pi. And so half of 2 pi is just equal to pi. So that means that's the biggest that angle can be. So it's got to be somewhere between 3 pi over 4 and pi. And so that means that x is somewhere in the second quadrant. Okay, so it's actually, we can be more specific. It's somewhere between 3 pi over 4 and pi. In other words, second quadrant. Okay, so let's go to the last part, or at least the parts that I'll do. I'll leave the calculator parts for you. It says determine an exact value for cos x. Okay, so I know cos 2x is equal to 8 over 17. I'm looking for cos x. Well, this is where I can use the fact that cos 2x has 3 possible equivalent expressions to replace it. So I'm just going to choose the one that has the cosine in it. So here cos 2x can be rewritten as 2 cos squared x minus 1, which is equal to 8 over 17. And so now I can just solve for cos x, which is the thing I'm looking for. Okay, so first we'll bring the 1 to the other side. So 8 over 17 plus 17 over 17. So again, work with common denominators. So I'm going to divide that 2 to the other side. So 8 plus 7, so that's 25 over 17. And, well, dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by a half. So now in order to find cos x, okay, I need to take the square root of both sides. So it's going to be positive or negative square root of, this looks like 25 over 34. Okay. So question is this going to be the positive or negative square root that we're going to use? Well, it looks like this is why they asked us the question in B, which quadrant is cosine in. And since cosine of x, or since x has to be in the second quadrant, it means its cosine has to be negative. Okay, so that means I'm not going to choose the positive version here. So here cos of x is equal to, and I can simplify it a little bit because the numerator is a perfect square. So this is just equal to negative 5 over square root of 34. Okay, so just to recap, number 1 was how to figure out what quadrant x was in based on what we knew about 2x. So I just had to make that argument about the highest and lowest possible values. And then from there, in order to determine cos x, I had to carefully choose which version of the double angle formula to use. Okay, that's it for this one.